leadership is born from resilience. Like really leaders, and especially women leaders in the context of Congo Basin, say context of conflict, scarcity, displacement. Their leadership is grounded, pragmatic, and anxious in a kind of survival. It is like, I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I have to do something for my community, for this population, because nobody else is doing it.
Welcome back to Black Earth Podcast with me, Marion Atieno Osieyo. In today's episode, I'm incredibly honored to meet with Mireille Kayijamahe. Mireille is the founder and host of Terra Mucho, and Terra Mucho is an inspiring platform that's uplifting African women's voices in the Congo Basin and across the Francophone world. Mireille belongs to and works in the Congo Basin, which we know is one of the world's most biodiverse regions and so full of culture, of life, and of memory. I wanted to speak with Mireille today to find out more about her work, because she's not only helping to rewrite the narrative in the Congo Basin, but she's also helping African women to reclaim their voice and their place in environmental and social change. Okay, Mireille, thank you so much for joining us today on Black Earth Podcast. How would you describe your relationship with nature?
Well, my relationship with nature is kind of deeply personal, layered, and emotional. As a human, we are part of nature and we are made of water, mineral cycles. But as a woman, I experience this like every month, when every month the moon reminds me my body is part of the rhythm, And also, as a Bantu woman in our cultures, like the land is the mother, the source of life. So my grandparents were farmers, and I grew up like watching them fully like sync with the rain, with the sun. So that's kind of like my initial like connection with the nature, what I can call it. But there is a sadness of this because my grandpa, they are not living anymore, and my grandma passed away in a terrible moment during the war in Congo. And their land has become a kind of jungle. You cannot go there anymore. There is so many like rebels, conflicts, whatever. So I feel sometimes like, okay, even if I'm part of it, I'm kind of disconnected, like with our life, as you know, in cities, like where you don't have like kind of like really natural environment around you. So there is that sadness. But what hurts me the most is the fact that I cannot go back to my ancestral land, and that's a long time. So there is some part of nostalgia, grief, gratitude, longing when it comes to my relation with nature. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mireille. The landscapes that we belong to, they hold so much memory. They hold so much life about us.
Definitely.
And they tell our stories in so many ways, So, yeah, I'm really grateful that you've been so open and like vulnerable in sharing all the different ways that we're connected, Our relationship with nature is, it's a story about love, but it's also a story about heritage, about memory,
Absolutely.
about trauma as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I wanted to ask you about Terra Mucho. So how did tell us about Terra Mucho? How did Terra Mucho come about?
Well, Terra Mucho has lived inside me for decades, I will say that. But the form has changed over time, but the intention was always there. The moment it crystallized was when through my work with civil society organizations and civil society leaders, I realized how absent women were in leadership spaces. I used to run leadership development programs for civil society leaders, and I wanted it to be kind of gender balanced. And when I was kind of insisting to have like man and woman in our program, there was almost they will send me like often a secretary, an intern, and rarely a woman who is leading. So yet we know, like, yet on the ground, it's women who rise every morning to care for land, to keep community functionings. So this contradiction led me and my team to conduct a study during the pandemic, and that study revealed what many suspected: discrimination exists even within civil society. So women are pushed to the margin when real decisions are made. The few who make like leadership, like who can make it, like who are in this leadership position, are usually those women who has had like that courage to found their own organization. So I felt a responsibility there to change something. I don't know if you know this woman called Mariam writes Elderman. She said, like, you can't be what you can't see. And I wanted to make these women be seen, being visible, so that they can share their stories, so that younger generations can also see that it can be possible. I can also be a leader. So storytelling, as you know, is part of the African DNA. It's how our grandma taught us wisdom. And I see the podcast that it can become that space, a modern version of our traditional storytelling cycle and spaces. Yeah. So that's how actually all started, because Terra Mucho all started with the podcast as the first thing.
I definitely resonate with some of the things you've mentioned. Storytelling being part of our DNA as Africans, the power of learning in community, and I think podcasting is such a great tool, a great format for that.
Yeah.
The importance of voice, hearing our voices,
Yeah.
not having other people speak for us, but speaking in our own voices, our own languages, which is one of the reasons I also love Terra Mucho, because it's sort of an English-based podcast, right? So there's a whole new world. Every language has its own world and portal.
Yeah.
And it's really great to learn that, and to
Yeah.
imagine what can be. So Terra Mucho started as a podcast. Now more than a podcast, it's definitely evolved. So can you tell us a bit more about the kinds of things that you're doing now with Terra Mucho?
Mm. So actually, when I started like doing interviews with women, kind of something become natural and has grown up like kind of organically. When I started, the women hearing like, "Oh, Mireille, I listened to this episode and I felt like she was telling my own story," or "Her journey gave me strength. Can you connect us?" Or "We need spaces to talk to each other, not only to you." And I was like, "That's fair. You don't need to only talk to me." So I was like, "Okay, there is something that is needed here." That was the moment I realized, like, the podcast will not be that the only project I would be doing. It was just the beginning. So yeah, that's like feeling from women, like they were feeling isolated and not like having that much spaces to share and learn from one another, and with so much of common issues they are facing. Like in Congo Basin, women work in extremely difficult conditions. Like we have this extractivism, political conflict, or even army conflict, political pressure on environmental activists, limited resources. When you look at the rest of the world, where like there is a big potential for protecting the earth, like Congo Basin is receiving like a small piece of it. So it is like limited resource. And yet they are rarely like a community. They keep like doing their work. They wanted to learn from one another and see how to tackle these things. So that's where I was like, wow, there is something which is needed. So we done a kind of consultation discussion with them and have a few options I share with them. And one of the things they were like, well, we love this well-being pathway you are proposing. How will that be? I was like, this is the space for you to rest, to heal, to discuss, to strategize, to have plan. Like as you start the year, you have a plan for yourself, for your work, for your life. So that is one thing we propose, a well-being pathway. It started with an annual retreat where we bring together all the women we had on the podcast, and we have a 5-day retreat like with them where they will really share and look at themselves at a holistic level and see like what needs to change in my life so that I can stay alive and continue doing the work I'm doing. So that's one thing. And next year we will start proposing mentorship, because it has been also a request like, oh, we want to learn from one another. We want to really have a kind of thinking partner or talking partner or somebody who will guide us. And also we have a storytelling training, because like one of the issues is like being like feeling like shy to talk about the powerful work they are doing. So right now we have these three things, which like two things which are going on: well-being pathway and storytelling pathway. And next year we will start with this mentorship pathway, but with the idea not only to create those space for them to learn from one another or to support one another, but also for us to try and get the deep understanding of them and to connecting them to opportunities. Because I see myself as being a bridge, like knowing like the Congo Basin well, like having like that privilege also of knowing like the international like kind of market and ecosystem. So like connecting to opportunities, to funding, that will be part of what we aim to achieve in the coming 2 years. Like the more we'll get to know them, the more we can be able to connect them to the relevant opportunity that they need. So and that's like, yeah, maybe one important thing, because one thing, these pathways are run in what we call now a Mosaic Moasi collective, which is a collective of women from Francophone Africa, women like working for environment. So we hope that this become a big collective, a big movement where women can support one another and access opportunities and share transparently in that spirit of supporting one another. So yeah, that's what Terra Mucho is about right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so inspiring. I love the thread of well-being, storytelling, and mentoring. Those are three really important aspects of leadership as African women, you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really amazing. I'm curious to understand more about any kind of, because of your international like experience, you know, you've been able to work in different cultures and contexts, and now you're based and working primarily focused on the Congo Basin. Are there any like approaches to leadership or practices in leadership that you feel are unique to the women that you've worked with across the Congo Basin?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, when it comes to Congo Basin, yeah, some practice of the way people related to leadership, the way you see them in their role, I see some kind of four threads or characteristic or foundation that like really ground them as leaders. So the first one, it's clear that leadership is born from resilience. Like really, leaders, and especially women leader in the context of Congo Basin, say context of conflict, scarcity, displacement. Their leadership is grounded, pragmatic, and anxious in a kind of survival. It is like, I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I have to do something for my community, for this population, because nobody else is doing it. Because, as you know, states are in a very big failure. So, like, leaders, like civil society leaders, do a lot to keep country functioning, to keep community alive. So, like, it's born from that resilience, and it's woven with care. They don't have the luxury to separate, like, personal, especially when it's come to women. They don't have the luxury to separate personal and professional. Even when I'm like doing this all well-being, and of course I am so much influenced with the Western thinking of stuff, like, because that is the norm. And when we start talking about the balance, they are like, what balance are we talking about? Like, how are we talking even about this? Like, it's life, no? We have to carry all of these. So they carry communities, families, and environmental work simultaneously, like all of that. They do it at the same time. And it feels like, yeah, this is, there is no balance, like it is our lives. So it is also calling some time for myself, like, okay, so when we are doing all this well-being, what are we talking about? How will this really, like, help? Because we cannot all try to find this, separate this. It's not separable. You cannot separate it all together. So that's one thing. Another thing, it is like there is some kind of abundance in scarcity. Even I've talked about this even previously. Even with very limited resource, they show kind of radical generosity, sharing time, energy, often with their own money, because many of them get very little, like, salary, and some of them even not. I know some of them taking their own money in the pocket and go to plant trees and to mobilize community about regenerating a space. And it's just incredible and inspiring. And finally, and all of this is connected. I will say there is a type of kind of ancestral leadership which is really kind of this, the way you say at the beginning, like how our relationship to nature is, it carries some kind of memory, some kind of heritage or whatever. So their connection to land, to ancestors shape everything. So leadership for them is not about position or the work. It is just about responsibility. That's all. So those are kind of the four things I've kind of seen, and which has like make me like, oh wow, realize it's not a job, it is a life.
I want to thank you for like helping me to understand and just see how clearly their style and their approach to leadership is like grounded in their realities and what's happening in this part of the world. But also I'm so inspired by the idea of like abundance and scarcity, and how they're able to continuously practice generosity even when they don't have, if that makes sense. I'm curious to understand more about well-being. This is one of my favorite topics in the world. Because it's a lesson I had to learn the hard way. So I really talk about it a lot. um, why? Okay, so I mean, I'm curious, why was it important for you to incorporate well-being as a pillar in this work?
Well, as I told you, when I was like talking to women for the podcast, one thing was coming again and again. It is just how overwhelming they are, like how much they carry on their shoulder. And I was like, I know, I know a little bit of the test of this in my position, in my role. I know a little bit, but I was even so curious to know, like, in their perspective for those at the front line. So it feels like they are soldiers, like on the battle and dealing with everything. And as I was telling you, when you look at their day, it is just crazy. You are like, you know what? We can carry about the environment, but if it is us having this battle, we need to make sure our house, that's mean our body and our mind and our soul, still like can can also follow. Like, don't do it at the cost of your life. Don't do it at the cost of your body, because I know it is like your life, but at the same time, if your body stop, you will no longer do this. So that was becoming clear that, like, there is some space to think about then. Okay, I can do all of this, but how do I try to manage myself, to manage my workload, to manage my responsibilities, also to take care of myself so that I can continue doing this battle. So that was kind of the idea behind. And when we started doing this consultation, talking to them, they were like, yes, indeed, we need this space to pause, to reflect. Okay, where am I going? Why am I doing all of this? What can I prioritize? So it is many times when I talk, oh, we are doing this well-being pathway, people they think about a place like people are not doing anything, they're just laying, and it's massage and everything. It's not that. It is about pausing intellectually. It is pausing and being with other, nourishing from others' stories, and hearing, like, like, and starting to feel like that boundaries in our own body, in our own soul, to kind of build ourselves so that we become even more stronger, but on, how can I say, sustainably stronger. Because many times when you are in the fire and you are fighting, you don't feel like you are burning, but it's like, okay, we give you the space to feel your burn. You can feel like you are burning, and then start like getting out of that and trying to be strategically engaged in what you are doing, and not just going with your whole soul, but trying to balance every part of you. So that was kind of the idea behind. And I will say it is still a journey for us, like continuing learning from women actually. The more we'll be doing of this, the more we'll get like what is really, what does that mean, like providing a well-being support to African women working in this environment sector, because this sector, it is particularly what's the word in English? I think it's particularly with a lot of pressure, because there is a lot of interest when it's come to protecting the environment. There is so much money from this big company trying to grab land to exploit natural resources. So you cannot just go that way. You need some kind of be strong mentally, be strong physically, and be strategic in how you are going with this. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much, Mireille. There's so many things you've said that I resonate with. I think firstly, rest is it's something that nature teaches us. Rest is part of the cycle of creation.
Mhm.
And I think as leaders, we need rest to help us get perspective. We need rest to allow the things that we're creating also to unfold. But also it's an important part of sustainability, right? Like the work that we're doing is generational work. It won't be solved in one lifetime. And so we need to think in lifetimes, which means we need to treat our bodies, our minds, our souls with the pace that is required to do something across a whole lifetime. I think that African women, there's so much, as you said, as I heard you say earlier, there's so much invisible labor that we carry. And over time, that lands in our bodies, you know, in our well-being, in our health, in our life outcomes, you know. And so I'm so passionate about this because, you know, I see how much that we carry in our day-to-day basis, and how much pressure we can take on to uplift everyone, to, you know, to solve everything. And that often has consequences on our psyches, on our health, and on our ability to even enjoy the work that we do, you know. I believe even if you're working on, you know, there's a lot of things in environmental earth care that can be so heartbreaking. But even as you are connecting with nature, there's so much that is also life-giving and gives you so much joy. But it's hard to access that joy when you're burnt out, you know?
Yeah.
And so learning how to really rest, and then you actually have to learn how to rest, I think is really important. And you and I have both experienced burnout as a result of, you know, being part of the environmental movement and the work that we do. And I'm curious to understand from you now, how do you create balance in your life? Is this an accountability question? Are you like, oh my gosh?
Oh God, Mario, that's not a great question. That's not a great. Like, you are just touching a place which is kind of yeah. So to be honest, I'm still figuring this out. I'm still figuring this out. I wish I could say yes, it's perfect, Marion. I've found my balance. I know how, but that's not the case. Um, and I think it's important to say it loud, because so many women leaders feel the same way, but carry the pressure to pretend they are fine, to pretend like, oh, I am having this balance. I'm going to do some physical activities. I'm doing this. I'm fine. So it is not all about that. I think you've just said something which touched me when you say, like, we need to learn to pause, because pause is part of the life cycle. And I think I'm struggling so much with pausing, especially like when you start an organization and you create an organization. It feels like you are caring for a newborn. It needs attention all the time. It cries, it demands, it pulls you in every direction. Except, unlike a baby, an organization doesn't sleep. So you don't get those small windows like of rest where you can lie down and breathe. So the past takes over and over again. So, but I am kind of currently in a space where I'm thinking like, okay, Mireille, if you continue like this, you will head straight back into burnout. And this is not why you started like Terra Mucho. You need to think about how good to go with this. So, yeah, I think I am really in a critical moment of thinking about, like, how do I put in my routine and in the work routine, not only for myself, but for the team, a culture that allows rest, a culture that allows, as you say, we will not figure it out in one lifetime. So a culture that allows to think about sustainability, not only for myself, but for the team. And in that way, we can we can leave the talk actually as we are supporting women with this well-being. So yeah, I have a few ideas, like, and as you know, like the difficult moment when you are starting an organization, it is like getting the funds to hire everyone you need. So at the moment when people ask me, oh yeah, you are a director for Terra Mucho, I say yes, I'm director. I'm the secretary. I am everything. Like I have like working with two people, but I do everything. And it's many times people say like it doesn't seem like you started just last year, and I'm like, okay, maybe there is one part of me which is kind of in moving so fast, and where I need really to slow down. And I think partly thinking about this podcast and this question of reflection, I was like, oh, again, this is a call for you, Mireille, to think about this seriously, really, and think about this sustainable way you can continue carrying this work and supporting other women. So still a battle for me, and I would be curious to know maybe at one moment if you have find some of ways of getting out of this, Marion. I would be curious so much.
Yeah, having the funding to create this podcast this season has allowed me to find balance because I have space and time and support to really bring forth the vision that wants to unfold into this world, you know? So I
Yeah.
think balance is both a discipline and a practice that we have to take responsibility for, but it's also about having community around you who can support you to receive that balance, whether it's your loved ones, whether it's,
Yeah.
a funder who believes in your vision and wants to give you the resources to
Mhm.
be able to bring that vision to life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Marion. I think the thing I get out from that, like, you don't have a point of balance. It's changed. Your balance can change
Always.
according to, you need to know, like, yeah, that's it, my takeaway.
Yes, it's in
Um,
motion. It's harmony in
yeah,
motion.
yeah.
So I would love to talk to you about the DRC and the Congo Basin
Mhm.
because, we're both from, East Africa, East and Central Africa.
Yeah,
I am from
yeah.
Kenya, and, I grew up with a deep appreciation and love for the Congo region. It's got such
Mhm.
rich culture, beautiful musical heritage that my dad raised me on. So I have such a deep appreciation
Yeah.
for the region. And then also now in my work in earth care and really getting to understand and respect how some ecosystems around the world really keep the world going, like the whole earth life cycle.
Yep.
And the Congo Basin is one of those places in the world. And we also know, and as you've mentioned earlier, that it's also a part of the world that has gone through so much violence and so much conflict. And I'm just curious to hear from you how that has shaped you both personally and, as a leader in the work that you do with Terra Mucho.
Yeah. Um, Definitely, like, yeah, this context in Congo, and now it's kind of extended in the larger Congo Basin as well, has shaped like my life. Actually, I cannot live anymore in my homeland. I've become a nomad. I used to say, or like in laughing, like I say, like I'm a privileged refugee because at least I can choose where I want to be a refugee without like being such like in that in to tick that box. But yeah, have become a nomad, like no way to live on my homeland. Yeah, and over the past 2 years, the world has so much focus on what's happening in Gaza, in Ukraine. And I have a deep compassion for both people from Gaza and Ukraine. But the war in Congo remain like invisible. Um, they will only talk about that when there is a big dramatical like event. But many people has leave their home, they leave their villages, they are internally displaced. Last year it was a kind of a moment, like in beginning, not last year, this year, January, that was again the conflict like has exploded again and push number of people outside of the country. My parents are outside, they're in Uganda. Yeah, so that is kind of like when you realize, before that being evident, before my parents being like outside of the country, even if it was hard to be in Congo, in Goma, where I came from, but it was like, well, I have home. But now it has become like, oh God. So we don't have a home, our homeland anymore. So it is like personally affecting me every day, like in my life. And it just affects me professionally because it's determined like, this idea of, as I told you, like at the beginning, this idea of the podcast, I wanted like, it stays with me for a long time, the idea of Terra Mucho. But I wish I could do that in Goma, in Kivu, in Eastern DRC, but no, I cannot. And of course, I'm doing it from Cameroon for the whole Congo Basin and beyond for the large Francophone community. And I feel grateful for that. But at the same time, many times I'm like, oh God, I wish I could support more women in DRC, in Goma, and in Bukavu. But it shaped even like everything. I just realized, like, I think last time there was a call for proposal. It is a fund, and they were really like asking for African organizations to apply, and they were like encouraging that. And then I've I've started looking at the form, and I realized I couldn't apply. Why? Because actually, to secure Terra Mucho for to some extent, because I'm moving so much, I have registered it in DRC, of course, but also in France. But knowing that I'm out of DRC, I use most of the time the France registration, and that's put me like ineligible. And it is an initiative from an African for African, but that single box. And I used to say, like Terra Mucho look like me. It's also a kind of privileged refugee organization. So yeah, so I don't know if you all of that makes sense, but yeah, that's how it has shaped. It's shaped where you can be, where you can do stuff. It's shaped like who you are or how people see you. You know, it shaped decision you can make for the organization, for yourself, all of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I'd love to hear from you, Mireille. What truths or perspectives about the Congo Basin do you really want the world to understand or to center more of when we talk about this incredible part of the world?
Well, when it comes to Congo Basin, people usually see only extremes. They will see a territory like extreme in both sense, positive and negative. They will see, oh, this is a territory full of resource to extract. Oh, this is a place of poverty, of dictatorship regimes. Or when it comes to Kivu and DRC, oh, this is a landscape of violence and sexual violence, and of course, all of this is true. But the Congo Basin is also a land of extraordinary resilience, a land of joyful, strong people who rebuild again and again, even after, I don't know, after volcanic eruption. people who make so much with very little as that place. And it is the land of Kim Pavita, who is kind of a woman who has fights against colonialism. It is a place of Lumumba, and it's carry a long history of resistance and dignity and fighters. So I think that is also another part people should like really think of when they think about the Congo Basin. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mireille. Thank you for this conversation. I'm so grateful to bear witness to you. How can we support you, and how can we support your work?
Yeah, there is so many ways people can support us. It's helping us to amplify the voices of women shaping the environment work by sharing their stories, it's by connecting us with partners, opportunities, platform that can elevate Terra Mucho's work, but the work of the women we support as well. It is also just to sustain our programs, and this is for further. We need the resource like to establish these spaces and to maintain them in the longer term. Yeah, people who do that, like it shows that they stand with us and with the future we all depend on. By supporting women, we sustain that future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome, Marion.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Black Earth Podcast. I hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring. I'd love for you to let us know what you think, so make sure that you like this episode, you leave a comment, and you share with one other person in your network. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. If you're on Instagram and on LinkedIn, please connect with us on Black Earth Podcast, because we do some amazing stuff on our socials. We've had live events with our guests, we've done a book giveaway, we've done some fundraising and campaign support for communities in Sudan and Jamaica. This episode and this season of Black Earth Podcast is made possible because I have an amazing team around me. So first and foremost, to Kaz Watson, our intern producer. Thank you to Elliot Roche, our production editor. Thank you to Aditya and Vox Pop Studios. Thank you to Shanice DaCosta, our visual design artist. And thank you to our funding partner, Synchronicity Earth. I'll see you in the next episode of Black Earth Podcast.